Isaiah says, "Oh, that you would tear open the heavens and come down." That's how Advent begins. It begins with this great lament. Well, people are changing things these days, getting modern, and we have the old Advent text, these old Advent candles, purple, the rose-colored for joy. It's in the middle of Advent, even though the purple is to symbolize our need to start over, our repentance, coming to terms with who we are, what we need to be. The new Advent is blue candles. They have, and they don't do this kind of thing. They have different texts. I don't even know what they are. I haven't even looked them up. I'm not interested. Is it okay with you? We just do it the old way. David Bartlett says, "It's the Advent we need. I need it. I need it." The old Advent. Oh, that you would break, tear, rend the heavens and come down. It's a lament of someone whose life has fallen apart, whose country has fallen apart. Everything has gone badly. Where's God? Nobody can see God at work. God seems to either be silent, or God is impotent, uncaring, unable, without capacity. Life stinks. Where's God? Where's the people? Everybody's a mess. That's Isaiah's lament. That's the text Old Advent gives us on this first Sunday of Advent. And it's a text that I need. Now, as I was writing the sermon, I got a block right there. How do I make this a sermon for this congregation here at Concord? I was lying in bed, 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe 5:30. No, more like 4:30. And I realized that what I wanted to do is something I'd never done before. I've never done this before. I don't talk about this to anybody. I'm going to share with you my pain. Okay? I was 50 years old. I was a happy pastor. Couldn't have been happier. Of a congregation in Rochester, New York. Things were humming along. I mean, it was really a good time in my life. I just turned 50. My kids were in college. My wife had a great job teaching. The congregation was filled every Sunday. At the end of the year, we had to decide what to do with the surplus after all the tithes and offerings came in. I was happy. I was at the top of my game. I even loved upstate New York. I even learned to ski, cross-country ski. Didn't even mind the snow. Things were good. And then an opportunity came. Well, it was really funny. We had it snows 100 inches or more in Rochester, but we had a blizzard. Now, when I say you have a blizzard in Rochester, New York, that is a blizzard when everything shuts down. I mean, we were really hit. And so I'd seen an invitation to be president of a seminary in Kansas City, one place that I knew something about, and nobody could get out and do anything. So I sat down at my computer and I wrote out application. Seminaries call deans, professors, and pastors, one of the three, to be its leaders. And I was surprised that the call came. I was. And so, in the middle of my happiest moment, I took this challenge. We moved to Kansas City, and I became president of a school, president of a seminary. Some of my friends said that I was crazy. You're crazy for doing this. And then when I got there, I thought I was crazy. The place was really in bad shape. The buildings were depressing. All of them were depressing. The campus was depressing. The faculty was depressed. And for the life of me, I could not understand why anybody would even enroll and go to this school. If they had any other choice at all. It was a pits. I remember when we hadn't been there very long, when my wife and I had gone on campus for something, and the female students, the women students said to my wife, would you come and just look at our dorm? Would you see where we're living, what it looks like? She went in with the women students to the women's dorm, and I just waited outside, and I was on the sidewalk, and I remember, God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I noticed there were some weeds along the sidewalk, so I just got down on my hands and knees. Well, right now, this is all I know to do. I started pulling weeds out of the ground. That was my beginning. My wife, without a teaching job now, got inspired to start calling volunteers to help these students and others. And the volunteers began to come. Fact is, I'm glad she's not here because she'd be embarrassed. She developed the best volunteer program in the United States. Nothing else could touch it. There were local volunteers who came. They came from other states. They came from around the nation. Some came on day to day and went home. Some came and lived with us for 6 months, a year, 2 years. Some lived even longer, 3 and 4 years. They got there and they didn't want to leave. They were carpenters, they were painters, they were helpers, and all of a sudden things started to hum, and every building on the campus was touched with love and paint and renewal. It was an amazing thing to see. And my job as president of the school wasn't to teach. People ask me, do you teach? Oh, no, I'm not smart enough to teach. I knew why I was called there. I was called there because I had been a pastor, and pastors are connected to churches. And my job was to go get money. I'd never done that before. I had never been a fundraiser. You know, when you're a fundraiser, there's the first thing you've got to know when you're a fundraiser, you go and you make the ask, and then you shut your mouth. The next person who talks loses. Okay? I learned that much. And so I was looking for the $5 million gift. I never got it. But, you know, there was a big fish out there. I was convinced I got to find the big fish. I've got to find the $5 million fish. But the first ask that I made, I took my wife, I took the vice president. The three of us sat in a living room in Iowa City, Iowa, with the donor and his wife. And I made the ask, and I shut my mouth. And I got $250,000 that night. First ask. Actually, he called up later on and he said, Tom, he said, I want to give a little bit more. Is that okay? And I said, well, I'll think about it. He wanted to give a little extra because he wanted the faculty to have a bonus. Somebody called me on the telephone. Someone I had never met. My wife and his wife were sorority sisters, but I'd never met this guy. Never met him. He said on the phone, I'm going to write you a check for $100,000. That was the second gift. The $5 million gift I couldn't get. I met another guy who had been a graduate of the same college I went to. Never met him before in my life. We both went to the same lecture. After the lecture, we had coffee. I talked to him. And over the next 3 years, he gave me $300,000. $100,000, $100,000, $100,000. I helped the old faculty retire. We called the new faculty young, sharp, good teachers. And the best thing I ever heard during those 10 years was somebody said, you know, Tom, your school, that's the one to go to now. I did some reading in leadership. Leadership is a great field, and I was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? How does a leader act? How do you lead? And there's a book called Leadership on the Line written by a couple of fellows. It sort of became my second Bible. It was next to my bed. I read it and reread it and reread it. And I think it was in that book where it said, when things are going great, watch out. I know it was the book, that was the book where I read, sooner or later. He was talking about, your opportunity to be a leader. You do, all these things. It's not easy. But sooner or later, they're going to get you. I was in my car. Actually, Audrey was with me. We're going on a 3-day trip. I forgot where we were headed, but my telephone rang and I answered it. It was my secretary. She says, Tom, I've got a letter. I think I'm addressed to you. I opened it, of course. She always opened my mail. And I think I need to read it to you. And this was after 10 years. It was a vote of no confidence by the faculty. A couple of days later, I got back to the school, and there was a second letter, and it was a vote of no confidence from the administration, the other people on staff. These things happen to presidents of colleges and seminaries, universities. Sometimes this happens, and sometimes they fight and stay. And I didn't have the heart to do either one. I cleaned out my office the very next day, didn't have a job, 60 years old. And the thing that hurt the most, the vote of no confidence, leaders get that. I mean, I understand. To lead means to help people to change and see things differently. It means to stretch them and take away what they love. I understand leadership like that. I know that sooner or later they're going to get you if you're a leader. What really, really hurt and what broke me, and I'm still broken, was that I had spent 40 years developing friendships all over the country. Everybody knew my name. And only one friend came and stood with me. Just one. I was so ashamed. Guilt is when you do something wrong. Shame is when you feel like you are wrong. The shame that I felt has never gone away. It's what I work on. I had a couple opportunities to go to churches, one in Michigan, two in Oregon. I almost took one of the ones in Oregon because my wife said, we're going to go to Pittsburgh to be with our grandchildren. And you can do interim work, temporary supply, like right now. And the last place in the world I wanted to go was Pittsburgh. I almost went to Oregon just not to come to Pittsburgh. I thought, I'll never be able to drive. And the sun doesn't shine. And I'm a Chiefs fan. I don't care for the Steelers. Oh, I got converted on that one. Advent invites us into whatever darkness, whatever pain, whatever sin, whatever has broken our lives. And can I say that all of us know what that's like? That none of us ever gets the life we planned. It never happens. That along the way, all of us will meet those moments and days and years when we lament life like Isaiah. This is rotten. This is not good. And so as Isaiah, as he's writing his lament, and he talks about the fact, God's not around. We can't see God at all. The people are a mess. Even when they try to do good, they can't. We're like a leaf that just blows away in the wind. This is bad. Now, when you read the Bible, you need to look for certain words. They're words like this. But, or sometimes it's the word nevertheless. In this case, Isaiah's word was yet. Yet, after having gone through his lament, he comes to that moment when he says, yet. And then he says, we are clay. And you, O God, you are the potter. And we are the work of your hand. And God keeps working. And we break and God mends. And we hurt and God heals. And we are lonely and God comforts. We are the work of your hand. I'm trying to live the life that God has given me now. I struggle with that. Why didn't I do this back then? Why did I make that decision back there? Why do I have to live this life? Why? Because this is the life that God has given me. And yours is the life that God has given you. And it is a good life. Because we are in the potter's hand. Who makes us and who makes all things brand new. Amen.